Hi, I'm Jonathan Weinberg. So today's very exciting because we hit 500 subscribers on the channel. And I know that's not a lot, but when I first started about a year ago, we only had, around 30 subscribers. So it's a lot more than that. And it's very nice to have so many people who are watching. It's a lot more than I realized that have looked at my any given art exhibition that I have. It seems there, thousands of people are looking at these videos in any time, and then I do an art show or write a book, and it's hard to know who's actually reading these things. So anyway, it's great and it's wonderful having your comments, and thank you very much. So today I'm going to do I think fairly quick review and look at a semi-vintage pen. I mean, it's not that old. This is a pen that is from the 90s. This is the Lamy Persona, and it should look very familiar to you because not that long ago I reviewed the Lamy Imporium, and this really is the child of these pens. You can see they're very similar looking in terms of design, and they're both designed by Mario Bellini for Lamy. I think it's really interesting to compare them, to have them both. I was able to get this really good deal on the Persona, which is shiny. It's this wonderful platinum version of the pen, and I think it's interesting to look at the subtle differences between the older version and the new version. The number one thing that you're going to see that's different about them, if we forget about just the fact that one is black and one is platinum or the silver color, is the clip. The clip on and it's really quite interesting, quite beautiful, on the Persona comes up and down like this. And so that's quite elaborate, and it's nice the way it clips onto, it might clip onto a shirt. Now, interesting thing about this pen is that this is really the second iteration of the Persona. When it first came out, it didn't have this little bump, and I think what happened was that it would roll off people's desks. So the designer added this tiny little it almost looks like a mistake, I have to be honest. This tiny little nib here, a little extra little piece of metal that keeps the pen from rolling off. Now, it's always interesting in terms of design conceit. Typically when you have a clip on a pen, it doesn't recede into the cap like this does. So if the clip came out, as it does in the next version of the pen, the current version of the pen, that solves the problem of the pen not rolling off your desk. But the clip on the new version, it does come out like this, but it doesn't recede into the pen. It's not as cool as the clip on the older version. When you open the pen, it is actually very similar to the new version, with the exception, and I think it's very exciting, the older version had a unique nib. A nib that in some ways looks like an earlier kind of Schaefer nib from, let's say, the 50s and 60s, and it comes all the way around. And what was cool is that this was meant to be the flagship pen of Lamy and had its own unique nib on it, so that made it different from any of the other pens. It's a in this case a 14K nib, When it first came out, it had an 18K nib, so that's a way of knowing the difference between the very first version. I guess we should call this the Lamy Persona 2, right? I mean, that's not its official name, but that's when they introduced the 14K nib and this little bump, the little bump on the cap that keeps it from rolling off. And otherwise, the pen is very similar. When they came out with the Lamy Imporium, they decided to go with the standard Lamy nib, right? So it has the, well, in this case, it's coated in with black, but it is the standard size nib in 14 karat gold that fits on other pens. You can actually, you could, if you want to, take this nib off and put it on a Lamy Safari or a Lamy Studio, right? The Persona had a nib that only would fit on the Lamy Persona, so that's another difference. And I will show you how it writes. I actually think the Persona writes really, really beautifully, and I think it's preferable to this standard gold nib, which is fine, but I am not a huge fan on the standard Lamy 14K nib. I think the Lamy gold nib that is on the Lamy 2000 is superlative. And I think the Lamy's regular metal nib that's on Safari is fine. And the 14K nib is fine, but I don't think it's special. And it's so special, and I don't think it's that much better than the steel nib. But that's my, as I say, that's my opinion. In terms of size and weight, they're very, very close, but the Lamy Persona is actually a little tiny bit longer. It's 5.5 inches long. When it's posted, it's 6 3/8, so it gets very, very long. And when it's unposted, it's 4 3/4 inches. It weighs 46 grams, which is pretty heavy. When uncapped, it's 32 grams. The Emporium, this is the Emporium, is 48 grams, so it's slightly heavier. Capped and uncapped, it's 35 grams. It's ever so slightly smaller capped, so it's 5 7/16 inches long. When it's posted, it's the same size, 6 3/8, and unposted, it's 4 3/4 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a writing sample, and then I've done a drawing, as I tend to do, of zinnias and colored it in. Zinnias are sort of in bloom in the Northeast now. It's sort of the August flowers as we move into chrysanthemums and the fall. And so, as always, thank you for watching this channel, and we'll be doing some other reviews. In particular, I think coming up soon, I'm going to do something about cross-hatching and looking, as my other job as curator of the Maurice Sendak Foundation, I want to do something about Maurice Sendak and cross-hatching and fountain pens in cross-hatching. So I'm going to look for that, and I think we'll have some really interesting things and interviews and all kinds of interesting stuff on this channel as we try to go for 1,000 subscribers. So please subscribe, because it means a lot to me, and it makes me feel like somebody is watching the channel. And make comments too if you've had experiences, particularly with these two pens. I think you'll see is that I think the Lamy Persona was actually superior to the Lamy Emporium, although I do like the black finish on the Emporium. Okay, this is the Lamy Persona. Now, it's a very heavy pen. It posts very securely, but actually when it posts, I think it's too heavy, so I'm not going to post it. I have a bold nib in this. The nib is very smooth. This is Taki Sumi. And we have a rodeo paper here. There is some feedback to this nib. Not much flex to it. But it has a very pleasant feel to it. I think it's quite smooth. Reasonably wet. Very nice. Now, I love this finish, but it is slippery. Slippery, more slippery than the black finish of the Emporium. Now, I should point out, though, that the Persona came in different finishes. You can get a titanium finish, and I think there is a black finish of it, too. So it wouldn't have been as slippery. But this nib is very, very nice. And here is the cap screws on, and as I say, it posts very securely, kind of clicks on, but it becomes a very long pen, and it's quite a heavy pen. I really do like, it's kind of nice, the way in which this clip goes in and out. It is designed in such a way, it seems like the cap, moves a little bit when it's posted, but it's designed in such a way so it doesn't scratch. It doesn't connect up with the back of the pen, so that's very nicely designed. That's done intentionally. And here is the Lamy Imporium. It's also bold. It's also Taki Sumi. And it's a little less smooth. Also, not much flex to it. Perfectly pleasant. But it's smoother than the Safari nib. Not as much feedback. Both of these pens use converters, I should point out. They're very similar. They're obviously very, very similar. Here's the converter, typical classic Lamy converter. Both very substantially made, but the Emporium is a bit of a simplification, particularly when it comes to the clip, from the Persona. Maybe in a way it makes more sense because you don't have to have that little funny little bump to keep it from turning and falling off the table, and yet there's something quite distinctive about the way in which the original was embedded in the cap, which I kind of like better. Both, I think, are very handsome pens, though. Very beautiful pens. So next I'm going to do a drawing of zinnias with the Persona, and kind of have colored it in. And, but you can't really go wrong with either of these pens. I think they're really beautiful.